Today will be partly sunny with a high in the 60s.
Now it is their turn. The Vice President, the Senator, and the War Hero. Get ready for tonight's face-off in Atlanta. Well, wake up, everybody. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
And I'm Joan Lunden. It is Tuesday, October 13th, and 7 o'clock Eastern Time tonight, Vice President Dan Quayle, Senator Al Gore, and James Bond Stockdale, Ross Perot's running mate, will square off at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And our Denise Richardson is also there this morning getting ready to cover the debate of the running mates. Denise, good morning.
Good morning, Joan. Well, the mics have been tested, the lights checked. A lottery will be drawn at 11:30 this morning to determine who among Georgia Tech University students will be attending tonight's showdown. And we'll introduce you to some of those students who feel they know exactly what to expect tonight. Charlie?
All right, thanks, Denise. James Bond Stockdale, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
007 be up there debating tonight. Spencer, the weather?
Well, Charlie, the meteorological phenomenon known as the big flip-flop, borrow that term from politics, will occur later in this week. In layman's terms, where it's cold now, it'll be warm later, and where it's warm now, it'll get cold later, and we'll give you all the details in this half hour.
All right, thanks very much, Spencer. For many people at ABC, the nightmare in old Yugoslavia was brought home with the death of our friend last summer, producer David Kaplan, who was killed while covering the war. And journalists like him are still there telling the world about people's suffering, and their lives have been forever changed. The reporters' lives have been forever changed by the experience. This morning, Tony Bertley, who's been covering the war for ABC, will be here to tell his compelling personal story. But let's go to the news, and leading the news at this hour, the latest on that deadly earthquake in Egypt, Mike Schneider with that story and the other news of the day. Mike.
Thank you, Charlie. Good morning, everybody. Geologists consider this to be a moderate earthquake, 5.9 on the Richter scale. But officials in Cairo are calling it the worst earthquake ever in modern Egypt. At least 370 people are reported dead. It's expected to go higher than that. Thousands more have been injured. We have a report now from ABC's Hal Walker.
It was the worst earthquake in Egypt's history, striking without warning and toppling several tall buildings in the capital city of Cairo. Damage was widespread but selective in the initial shocks, and the toll of dead and injured is expected to rise as rescue workers reach the crowded, poorer areas of the city. The epicenter of the quake, measuring 5.9 on the Richter scale, was located about 20 miles southwest of Cairo. Its impact was felt as far away as Jerusalem, 250 miles to the northeast. Among the victims were a number of school children trampled when youngsters stampeded in panic. Others were simply trapped as their homes collapsed or injured by debris sent flying by the earth tremors. Efforts are continuing to reach survivors as Egypt's President Hosni Mubarak has cut short a visit in China to return to the scene of the disaster. Saudi Arabia's King Fahd has pledged nearly $100 million for victims of the quake. Hal Walker, ABC News, London.
By the way, that quake was centered just a few miles away from the pyramids and the Sphinx, but officials say there was no serious damage to those ancient monuments. Back in this country, the director of the FBI, William Sessions, has confirmed what ABC News first reported last night, that Sessions is the subject of a Justice Department investigation for alleged ethics violations. ABC's Sam Donaldson broke the story, and he has details.
Sessions, who is scheduled to be questioned by Justice Department investigators on Thursday and Friday of this week, has the reputation of being Mr. Clean. Yet Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility is now looking into possible ethics violations by him and his wife Alice. Sources say the use of government autos, airplanes, and personnel for private purposes is one of the areas of inquiry. Sources friendly to Sessions see this as an effort to get the FBI director and force him out, because they say he's been resisting administration attempts to politicize the FBI. Sessions cannot be fired since he has another 5 years to go on his 10-year statutory term as director. He is said to be sure the investigation will clear him and is described as determined to fight any attempt to force him to resign. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, Washington.
Other news for you on this Tuesday morning, Vice Presidential candidate Al Gore trying to downplay expectations that he's going to be the big winner in tonight's debate in Atlanta. Gore will be facing Vice President Quayle and Ross Perot's running mate, James Stockdale. ABC's Mike Von Frem tells us what we can expect from the vice presidential debate.
The set here in Atlanta looks the same as the one in St. Louis. But unlike the presidential debate, there will be no panel of reporters asking questions. ABC News political director Hal Bruno will serve as the moderator. He alone will raise the issues and then let the vice presidential candidates have at each other. Al Gore came into town with the most fanfare yesterday, holding a pre-debate rally in downtown Atlanta. As a presidential candidate 4 years ago, Gore was criticized for being too stiff. But this year he's been a superb campaigner, and Democrats are expecting a solid performance tonight.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency.
I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Dan Quayle took a punishing blow from Senator Lloyd Bentsen in the vice presidential debate 4 years ago. But Republicans feel that if Quayle just holds his own, he'll be considered the winner in the all-important expectations game. The wild card in all this is Ross Perot's running mate, James Stockdale, a war hero who was held prisoner by the North Vietnamese for 8 years. He's now a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. Those who know him say Stockdale can be every bit as feisty and acid-tongued as Perot, but he's a political rookie playing in the big leagues tonight. Mike?
Mike, it strikes me as interesting that over the duration of the campaign thus far, the vice presidential candidates have been used as something of attack dogs. Does that mean we're going to see more of that this evening?
They have been attack dogs, and instead of the presidential debate, which some thought was a rather mild-mannered affair, Mike, this one may get down and dirty.
What about the added dimension here of Mr. Stockdale? Is he going to automatically alter this debate much the same way that Ross Perot did in the presidential debate?
I think he's got to change the complexion. I mean, after all, he teaches Greek philosophy. He deals an awful lot with ethics and morality, something you don't find a lot of in a presidential campaign. He could make it more of a highbrow affair.
Well, we can only hope so. All right, Mike, thanks very much. ABC's Mike Von Friend live for us this morning at the site of the debate in Atlanta, Georgia. By the way, there was word from the White House yesterday that President Bush will bring in a new group of economic advisors if he wins a second term. That means the old team would be out, and included on the list to go out would be the Treasury Secretary, Nicholas Brady, the Budget Director, Richard Darman, and the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, Michael Boskin. Bill Clinton has ridiculed the proposed shakeup yesterday, saying that when a team is losing, you don't fire the team, you fire the coach. That's a quote. The former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop says that he doubts that a cure for AIDS can be found. Koop says he doesn't see how scientists can attack a virus inside the nucleus of a cell and combine with the cell's DNA without damaging the cell itself. Dr. Koop also says President Bush is putting enough money into AIDS research. All right, time for a sports story last night. A little bit of history from the NFL. Monday Night Football game had no suspense. Washington did beat Denver 34-3, but here's the history. Washington receiver Art Monk, 7 catches last night. That gives him 820 receptions in his career. That is the all-time NFL record, one more than the retired Steve Largent. Over in baseball now, Jerry Brown had 4 hits and drove in 2 runs. Oakland beat Toronto 6-2 in the American League Championship Series. Toronto still leads the series 3-2. Game 6 Wednesday in Toronto. If the Jays win, they go to the series. The National League Series, Atlanta leading Pittsburgh 3-2, and that resumes tonight in Atlanta. And the muffled cheer you hear in the background is Charlie Gibson celebrating another Washington win.
Thanks very much, Mike. I'm glad you included that. It was last night on Monday Night Football, 3 hours of pure heaven for a Redskins fan, and especially for an Art Monk fan.
Aren't you happy for him?
He's a class act.
He really
and it was
is.
Wonderful.
Yep, terrific player and a class act as a person. You're right.
Hope he's around for many more years.
Yep. Well, from one class act to another, eh? Why is there laughter in the studio? I guess we better go to the weather, huh? Here's how it looks, Charlie. It's going to be a nice warm day across the southern 2/3 of the country. In fact, in the southern plains, a heat wave actually with highs into the 90s today all over the state of Texas and reaching up into parts of Oklahoma as well. But cooler air is a-coming. Look up in the north central and northwestern states where today's highs will reach only into the 30s in parts of Montana and 40s generally across the northern plains. That cool air over the next couple of days is going to assert itself. Now, here's the big flip-flop. We've been talking about this half hour. Today's highs, 85 at Denver, so it's mostly warm out west. 58 at Pittsburgh, mostly cool in the northeast and upper Midwest. By Friday, the high at Pittsburgh will be up to 81 as we'll have a big warm-up in the east, and the high at Denver will be down to 34 with snow falling over the northern and central Rockies. So the big flip-flop is on its way, as evidenced by the appearance of some snowfall on today's Outlook map. There will be light snow in parts of western Montana and northern Idaho. Mostly rainfall elsewhere in the northwest as a precipitation producer moves into that area. Mostly sunny skies just about everywhere else across the 48 contiguous states. Up in the northeast, sunny, a little nippy in the morning hours, but it'll warm up nicely by mid-afternoon. And there will be a little trickle of moisture down in the southwest. Parts of Arizona and New Mexico will see some widely scattered showers. That's a look at the national weather. Here's a look at the weather where you are.
Well, if you're looking for nice weather, I think we're going to have it right here in Iowa. Good morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Rick Mitchell. Looks like the cloudy, inclement weather will stay off to our north in Minnesota, where they could even see some snow showers. But for us, a nice dry day. This warm front will make it rather mild across the state. Temperatures topping out near 60 across the north, 60s in central Iowa, and even some 70s in the southwest. Forecast for Des Moines, partly sunny today with a high of 66.
We'll have more on today's weather in the next half hour. Joan?
All right, thank you, Spencer. Right now, 10 minutes after, will tonight's televised vice presidential debate draw as much interest as Sunday night's face-off by the presidential candidates themselves? Well, Dan Quayle, Al Gore, and James Stockdale hope so. And with a preview of that event, we turn now to our Denise Richardson, who is in Atlanta. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning, Joan. You can expect that the White House is banking on Dan Quayle to score a home run tonight when the vice presidential contenders square off. Al Gore is hoping to show that he's presidential material, while Ross Perot's running mate simply has an identity problem.
I would like to introduce Jim Stockdale, our vice presidential candidate, and his wife, Sybil.
If I say the name James Stockdale, what do you say? Not much.
I don't know who James Stockdale is, but maybe we'll find out tonight.
Voters will get their only chance to see the three vice presidential hopefuls debate tonight here at Georgia Tech University in Atlanta. And if you believe some analysts, they say Dan Quayle, Al Gore, and James Stockdale could make or break the presidential race.
I believe the vice presidential debates are much more important this year because of the nature of the problems facing the country, and also because of the two or three candidates, I should say, that we have running.
The presidential debate Sunday night had an effect on and brought up some questions in my mind that could possibly be answered by the vice presidential debates.
Possibly Bush's campaign could be dragged down if Quayle makes the kind of fatal mistakes he's made in the past.
I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Vice President Dan Quayle has been the butt of many a joke during his tenure, and it would appear that President Bush has distanced himself from his running mate.
They're trying to cover more ground over less time, trying to get their name heard, their faces seen as many places as possible.
On the other hand, Democratic nominees Bill Clinton and Al Gore not only came from the same geographical area, but seem inseparable.
Running mate means everything. Everyone looks at if something would ever to happen to the president or he couldn't continue on, you need a strong running mate. Therefore, people will have confidence if anything ever happened. You have to have just as much confidence in your vice president as your president.
That's one reason the League of Women Voters began to sponsor vice presidential debates in 1976. Public concern was mounting over the qualifications of vice presidential candidates. Since 1945, 3 had succeeded to the presidency without election.
In the debates, do you think appearances make a difference, how they come across, how they look?
Definitely. It killed Nixon.
Oftentimes for voters, it's not what the candidates say, but how they look saying it that makes the difference.
Appearances might make a difference for some people as far as the uninformed voter maybe, but for those people who are really concerned about the direction of the country, they just want to know how the candidates stand on the issues.
I'm looking for substance, and while I know appearances and the television really focus on that, I'm looking and listening for a substance from each of the candidates.
Yes, I believe that the first impressions do make a very big impact.
Well, many of the students here at Georgia Tech that you've seen in the videotape are Republican. They say that they expect quite a lot from the vice presidential debates tonight. There are 50 of them will be selected at 11:30 this morning by lottery to attend the debates. 500 will be in attendance in this auditorium. It'll be 62 degrees in here, so they won't be sweating. And those podiums, by the way, are 48 inches high. Joan?
Denise, interesting you say they expect a lot from the vice presidential debates. What do they expect from the vice president as far as a role, an office?
You know, that depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to one person, he'll say, the vice president is just a PR guy, doesn't mean much to the administration. He's there in case something happens to the president. People are saying now, in these economic times, whoever assumes the role of president and vice president, there's a team here, and that vice president is going to assume a lot more responsibility in that administration. And so they're really going to be looking very hard and listening very carefully to what these candidates have to say.
And of course, the big talk is Ross Perot really a viable candidate once again? What do they make of the Perot candidacy?
Well, you know something? What's happening is that Ross Perot is communicating on a level that the packaged candidates are not. They like what they're hearing, and who knows what will happen.
All right, Denise, thank you very much. And tomorrow we will find out what Vice President Dan Quayle thinks about his performance at the debate when he joins us in our first half hour. And then in our 7:30 half hour, Senator Al Gore will be here. We have also extended an invitation, I should say, to Ross Perot's running mate, Jim Stockdale. Right now, though, it is a quarter after. A personal story from the war in Sarajevo when Good Morning America continues.
They gathered at the co-op one Saturday morning. Independent farmers pulling together to make their community a better place. That's the idea behind the local co-ops that make up the farmland system. Co-ops owned by local farmers to meet local needs. Supplying farmland inputs for better farming to help produce better food more profitably. Together, they build a system that benefits everyone. Farmland. Better farming, better food.
Look into the future of anti-aging skincare. Elizabeth Arden's world of ceramides. Pure, perfect capsules for the face and eyes. Now, to help combat visible signs of aging, Ceramide Time Complex Moisture Cream. A new super breed moisturizer that delivers your best-looking skin in and out of this world. Ceramide Time Complex Moisture Cream. Elizabeth Arden. Your gift with any Elizabeth Arden purchase of $15 or more at Yonkers.
At Wiley's, we're different. I wear for every occasion and hundreds of styles to choose from. For a night on the town, out on the slope, the career look. Whether out on the range or out on the hunt, Wiley glasses go everywhere. At Wiley's, we are different. We're locally owned. We accept most insurances and Medicare because at Wiley's, the most important person is you. Come see us.
The world's greatest pantomimist comes to Stevens Auditorium in Ames Tuesday, October 20th at 8 p.m. Marcel Marceau will bring his special world to life for families and theater lovers alike. Tickets to Marcel Marceau are on sale now at the Iowa State Center box office and all Ticketmaster outlets, or you can charge by phone at 233-1888 in Ames or 243-1888 in Des Moines. Marcel Marceau at Stevens Auditorium in Ames Tuesday, October 20th at 8 p.m. You won't ever hear anything like it.
Leave your cares behind and get above it all. A high-flying treat in our next half hour.
Beautiful pictures there of the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. It is now 18 minutes after the hour, and for the next few moments, we want to try and give you a sense of what it is like to be in the most dangerous city in the world, Sarajevo. Yugoslavia is falling apart. That disintegration has occasioned fierce ethnic fighting that makes the once tranquil city a battle zone, counting just children. Between 600 and 1,400 have been killed in the past 6 months. The situation is so chaotic, the count is uncertain. 30 members of the media have been killed. Tony Bertley, who is covering the war for ABC News, has a very personal look this morning at Sarajevo.
It's not an ordinary hotel, but then Sarajevo is not an ordinary city any longer. This is home to a dwindling group of journalists. The Holiday Inn is unique, less than 150 yards from Serbian positions. It's been hit countless times by shells. Getting up to see tracer bullets ricocheting around the lobby is an experience most of us could do without. A tank round hitting the building in the morning is known as the alarm call. It helps to have a sense of humor here. The Bosnians constantly thank you for staying and telling the world of their suffering. But after 6 weeks of covering the story, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't sympathize with their ordeal. Every day they tell of their problems, their relatives who've been killed, the lack of food and winter clothing, and they ask you why the world does nothing. You can only say, I don't know. When you see a young child in a hospital bed without a leg caused by Serbian mortars, or the body of a senile old Muslim man who was shot 5 times when he went to feed the pigeons, it's hard not to become anti-Serbian. You have to remember you are covering only one side. People call Sarajevo the most dangerous city in the world. I've covered 8 wars, and it's the first time I've ever worn a bulletproof jacket or a helmet. Journalists go into action here like a SWAT team on a bust. Snipers are the constant threats, and you drive around town at breakneck speed because you think it makes you safer. But so many times you pass a place a couple of minutes before or just after a shell has delivered tragedy to innocent people. Often I'm lost for words. There are only so many ways to describe what I see. Visiting the hospitals is among the most unpleasant experiences. I've seen more death and mutilation here than in 5 years of reporting wars. But we have to sanitize the pictures. We can't show you what a shell really does to a human being, ripping off arms or legs, or the terrible injuries caused when an exploding bullet rips through somebody's insides. It's reality here, but most people would find that too horrifying to watch. In the few periods when you are not working, you tend to reflect on what you see, but so often it's what is not captured on camera that sometimes haunts you most. Such as the little boy, aged about 3, walking into the graveyard with his mother. As he passed me, he said, "I've come to see Papa." Going to the front line is a duty you have to perform, but it's not there where the suffering can be seen. The food shortage is acute, and I can see the tragedy which will unfold during the winter. But people don't ask you for food. They ask instead for cigarettes, so scarce since the tobacco factory was destroyed. Cancer is the least of their worries. A cigarette seems to ease their plight.
Okay, rolling.
Sending our reports by satellite to the US to be watched by millions is a warming feeling, but you often wonder what effect it has on people and the politicians who can influence decisions. Journalists experience a kind of hardship, but nothing compared to the Bosnians. Sometimes there is no generator-powered electricity, and often no running water. I've achieved the art of a wash, shave, shampoo, and a visit to the bathroom with less than 2 pints of water. And the food is basic, sometimes bad. The hotel manages to get supplies on the black market. You just eat, knowing that most people here get nothing like it. It's a long time since Ibrahim, the cameraman, and I have been so affected by a story. Sometimes the isolation of this people cannot be expressed in words. We often wonder what good in the long term the United Nations is doing here. Becoming cynical is not difficult in Sarajevo. Despite the danger and the hardships, journalists, no matter how much they feel for the people, always leave. The Bosnians have to stay. It's very hard to say to them, "I'm going." It's much easier to just slip away. Tony Bertley, ABC News, for Good Morning America in Sarajevo.
Our thanks to Tony. You often get the reporter's look at what's going on, what the action is. You seldom get a look at what life is like behind the scenes for the correspondents themselves. It is 22 minutes after the hour. In our next half hour, a doctor's advice about flu shots. And Good Morning America continues. Stay with us.
You know what tastes better on Grant's Farm bread?
Toast tastes better, jam is nicer. Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm bread.
Spreads taste livelier, pickles are crunchier.
Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm bread.
And why? Because Grant's Farm tastes so good all by itself, and it's cholesterol-free.
Beef is tastier, peppers are snappier. Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm bread. Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm bread.
Taste 'em.
For great Halloween fun, pick up some spooky decorations at Walgreens.